Okay, right. Well, we've heard a lot about agency, a lot about industry insiders. I'm coming at it from a different angle. We actually design and build solutions for out of home. An agent thought it would be a good idea to ask me what my experience has been around the world, what things have appealed to me. And in a grandiose title, The Evolution of Street Furniture. So what is street furniture? So Wikipedia will tell you it's a collective term for objects and pieces of equipment installed along streets. So this is street furniture. This is the official thing. So how did we get from here to here? How did we get from here, beautiful old Piccadilly Circus, to what's coming with the Ocean Daktronic screen as the one screen you've all heard about? How did we do that? Why do we get from these bus shelters, these quaint old request stops and these old stone bus shelters, how did we get to here? Which is the new stuff that you see from Deco and Adshel. How did we get from these payphones that you've seen in New York for years and in London to the new Link stuff that you've heard a lot about? And we will come back to this in a minute because they really are something. And most importantly for me, how do we get from these to these? That is a quantum leap in science and technology. It was actually the Romans that started this whole street furniture business. We've heard a lot about Egyptians, but it wasn't them. It was the Romans. And there's a person in this room who remembers it clearly. Rumour has it that these two chaps were at Verulainen waiting around for a bus, and they were getting wet, and they thought it'd be a great idea to build some street furniture. But seriously, they had all kinds of things, but the first bus shelter in the world was actually at Charney Bassett, opened on Coronation Day in 1953, and Mr. Deco himself was taking a keen interest because 11 years later, he was supplying them to councils free of charge, as we know, as long as he could sell all the ads on them. Obvious business model now, genius idea then. And all credit to him, because he didn't just stop there. He's done every kind of innovation in every kind of street furniture format you could ever imagine. And he has really moved it forward, and he's brought the competition along with him. So you're going to see lots of ad shells and lots of prime sites and lots of exteriors. But the first format I want to talk about is bus shelters. So this is the very first bus shelter being wheeled out in Lyon with the very first advert for Opel. Nice car, actually. That looks more like a Vauxhall Viva, doesn't it? And basically, the model was pretty simple. Put the ads up, change the ads every fortnight. But have they really changed? I mean, these are kind of 60s, 70s and 80s bus shelters that I found online. And this was last week. I was in Paris and I took the shot. Very nice. Has it really changed? Not a great deal in that format. But we tried. And we tried to jazz it up a bit with some funkier surrounds and some nicer looking things. And we've even gone crazy in Dubai, where they spend upwards of 200 grand on each bus shelter, which is fully air conditioned. And these were amazing. We thought these were going to be the future. Everybody inside is getting nice and cool, and everyone on the outside is being subjected to the ads on the front fascias. But guess what? It was an epic commercial disaster, apparently. These I saw in Brazil. These were great, just temporarily for the World Cup. They turned the bus shelters into gold. I loved that one. That really appealed to me. These ones for Absolute Vodka, again, bringing the whole thing to life, making it more interesting, helping the journey along. In Asia, they went a little bit bigger, larger format, but still similar sort of idea. The one here, absolutely my personal favourite, somewhere in Minneapolis, they decided to turn a bus shelter into an oven for a coffee brand, and all credit to them. I wonder if they sold more coffee. We stuck our oar in about 10 years ago. We made the first digital bus shelters for Adshel. They went on to Oxford Street. It wasn't quite large format, but it was a 52-inch screen that we retrofitted into the bus stops for guerrilla campaigns. So every 2 weeks we'd do a different city with a different campaign and then rebox them and put them back out again. And that worked well. And this is what it looks like today. Literally.
Sorry, let me ask a question. Sorry, it's me. Me in the corner.
Adrian.
Go back to your previous slide. That's the left button. Go on.
Done. You like this?
So, this is an interesting one. So these were yours.
Yes.
Esprit Digital.
Yes.
World's first digital bus shelters, you say.
Yes.
How many digital screens do you think there were in London in, say, 2007? Not just bus shelters, but just generally. How many do you think there were?
Less than 50 billboards. because they was fiercely expensive. There were hardly any bus shelters. Well, I don't think there weren't any in the immediate years after this, and all that there was the inside stuff. So we're going to come on to kind of malls and metros in a second.
Okay.
But to answer your question, none.
Right, okay.
And this, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is a really interesting idea. Speaks for itself. Big budget for a couple of bus shelters. They actually changed the way people looked at their environment and the way that the whole digital experience could really be brought to life.
Let me flip this script. I feel privileged for all who can witness this. I am close to divine. Know the moment is mine, to the moment of sign. I sprint. To all the squares that ask around, we getting it. My skills pay me. Trying to get a million, baby, with an adopted flow that God gave me. Me now. Tell whoever runners that they spot is temporary till I. Tell Miss I'm on my wealth kit. So when we cash out soon, I'm just investing.
I'm telling you, this is how it works, man. There's a little camera right here.
Everyone was working out how it worked, but either way, it proved that you could make amazing content and make the digital come alive.
Peter? This man? Neil Morris, Grand Visual need the credit.
For the video, thank you, Neil, for
Not
the
for the video,
for the
for
content.
campaign.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh.
I thought it said it on it. Did it not say Grand Visual?
No.
Everybody did the
No.
content for that amazing bus shelter.
He did entry.
He's got all the
Did
awards
entry.
already. Some of the other things I've noticed on my travels over the years, obviously, people put advertising on anything, as you can see here. You've got all kinds of descriptively named pissoirs floating around in Paris. You've got the bomb bins, which we designed way back in the day, which were, unfortunately, an epic failure. But I like the idea, but no one wanted to advertise and be associated with litter bins. So it kind of died a death for that reason. And then also they made that heroic mistake of using the old push technology for text messages. So you'd go past one of these things and they'd send you a text message, and of course that offended everybody. So unfortunately that died a death. Some of my favourite ones around the world, the bench is particularly nice. The Copenhagen Zoo buses look a bit scary. And this, oh look at this, isn't this great? In Colombia, don't know what it's for, it's some paint, this looks great. Other street furniture morphed out of just public utilities. This was a Morris column that I assume hundreds of years ago people used to dance around them, and then they kind of put on bits of paper for advertising that night. Larry Adler playing the harmonica in Paris. I mean, amazing stuff. But Decaux took it over, bought the lot, and today, this is again last week, exactly the same. Nothing's really changed other than it's got bigger. It doesn't seem to serve any public utility other than to brighten up the environment, but all credit to them. And of course we tried everything on wheels. I mean, this is epic, some of this stuff. That the Indian one, my favourite, with the camel. And of course that was the forerunner to this next slide, which is the Boris, well, now known as the Boris bikes, but actually, again, a Decaux innovation in Vienna, would you believe? Basically, again, ultimately to sell ads, even though they couldn't in Paris initially, they got around to it in the end, and I think it's been very successful for them. It's certainly, again, a massive benefit to the community. Going back to what Sandra was saying, how do we make it into a benefit? This is an obvious one. Everyone wants to get on their bike. It's healthier, it's quicker, and it's cheaper. The Moopis are a particular favourite. This is kind of the forerunner of the 6-sheet. Again, started in France. And these Moopis, basically, we've brought them on with some quite new stuff. This one's for the London Eye. We've done lots of different stadiums and venues around the UK, basically incorporating full outdoor technology in the screens, integrating it into some nice street furniture that, again, it can be touchscreen or gesture, and you go up to it, you get information, and everybody's seen that, and they're part of the landscape now. Oh, we missed my favourite one, of course. Right, so Ali does mouth to mouth. Of course, very highly suggestive. Back in 1995 or 6, this was the first ever digital network, I think, in the world. I'm claiming it anyway. We basically took 48 sheet backlights for Mauro Farrell, who obviously became Clear Channel, and we put these huge red scrollers all the way along them, 6 or 12 metres worth of them, and we were all very proud of ourselves, and they then said, no, you've got to turn them all off. You can't have them on because people are going to be killing themselves and driving into each other because they're going to be distracted by the messages on there. And luckily, the head of AdShell was able to...
You just need to explain, because at the top bit is a vinyl poster.
Yes, this is a normal backlight traditional poster, and underneath, obviously, the first part of the digital journey began. And then Magink, which John could bore you with later in the bar. Epic failure, but it did move the whole process on, but it relied on copious amounts of sunlight.
So, hold on, let me start. So go back to Magink. So who's ever heard of Magink apart from John Ellery?
There you go.
Oh, quite a few people.
Yeah,
so I'm
absolutely.
surprised. Okay, the veterans then. Okay, fine. Do you want to
Magink was a great idea. It was a cholesterol-based technology, correct me if I'm wrong, that was hugely expensive to make. John came to see me with it very early days, and we were going to deploy them everywhere, but I think it was a commercial thing rather than anything.
Mainly depending on sunlight.
Exactly, which we don't have enough of. So ultimately it didn't work. No.
It's a good story for those people. Again, I think it's one of those things that I think we need to do. We haven't got time to explore it fully now. And John, it would be good for you to talk about it as you were involved directly in the company. I remember when the Israeli company that had the patents came to us and were figuring out how they could sell their patent portfolio when they realised it didn't work. I mean, installing the whole thing in London where it's normally rainy, it's lovely today, but you don't have enough sunlight. They had to basically put lights onto the screen to make it work. So it worked in California, and the technology is great. And it's a little bit like some of the stories you get from E-Ink and Visionect and people who do in the electronic paper stuff that you get in Kindles now. But of course, the technology people, I was having a go at the Silicon Valley people before the Ciscos and the Qualcomms and the Intels and things. It's a similar story where they don't really understand. They don't come out and speak to people like yourselves who know much more about it than I do and listen to the advice that's given to them. But they go off with the technology and go, this is fantastic, we're going to make an absolute fortune. And investors put in hundreds of millions of dollars. And in the end, they sold the patent rights for like $25,000 to somebody. So
it was a little ahead of its time,
yeah.
And they all ended up in Morocco, I think. Where there was plenty of sunlight there. I particularly like the underpass ones. The Outdoor Plus have done good. One of my big themes, I'll come on to this a bit more, is seamless integration, which is a grandiose way of saying, does it fit in the space we're going to put it? Are we taking our space and just putting up a digital screen for the sake of it, or is it sympathetic to its environment? I think that's a particularly good example of those ones. Another one we did for the Olympics, this again on the same theme, is we retrofitted these for the Olympics around the park, and as you can see, you've got 1/2 ton of steel with the LED on the front and this box that we made at the back, just on 3 pins. And I think that again added to the environment, and it made it all feel like it'd been there forever. Phone boxes, right, okay. Adrian's particular favourite, I don't know why, I think he's a kind of a Doctor Who nerd, and obviously going back to the TARDIS days and these funky 70s kind of things, and how we've ended up via lots of interesting applications for phone boxes over the years. Who remembers Ziggy Stardust? Is that not a brilliant album cover? And how we've ended up here. And I found on the CCTV footage these two trying to shoplift one in Temple Fortune the other day. And the inventor, this is Alexander Graham Bell. They've wheeled him out for the first one. And he looks well. I mean, considering the guy's 300, and that is good. Oops, hang on, we've missed the best bit, which is actually what the link is really about. Obviously, we all think it's about the screens, which small is about. It's actually about super fast Wi-Fi and people making phone calls and getting connected. But again, I think I think that's been a really good installation. I'm a big fan. Obviously, I'm in New York a lot, and I think that has been done tastefully. I think the design is excellent, and I think it works, basically. I mean, you really can get, if you're within, I don't know what the footprint is, but let's say 50 to 100 meters of one of these things, you get hyper-fast Wi-Fi. And that is the utility that we're after. This was the underground. So going back to the underground, this is obviously my personal favourite because we took something that was impossible to monetize for TfL and Viacom at the time because all the posters were defaced and it had a bad rep, and we actually changed the technology via a lot of key inventions and actually put up something that people liked and that global advertisers bought. And suddenly you're going on the underground and Sony and Samsung and BA, BT and the world's biggest advertisers were advertising in the underground. Well, that just doesn't happen. Well, it didn't then, because you're more likely to get mugged than you were to go around looking at the screens on your daily commute. And it was a win-win-win. One of these few times where the planets lined up in all three directions, because obviously the paying public liked it because it was a distraction on a boring commute, or often, very, very difficult part of their day. Lots of people don't like being underground. TfL liked it because it brightened up their environment. They had all their walls redone in shiny new stainless steel. And the ad houses made really good money out of it at the time. Probably still do.
So let me just jump in again. Go back to that. Oh,
hang on. Well, this is how it started. So this is the very first station.
Go on.
Court Road.
So Grand Visual again.
Oh, hang on. Grand Visual. Is that big enough, Neil? Is that big? No? Yeah, it's big enough. Okay, good.
It'll do.
Grand Visual, by the way, did everything. We just did the hardware. So this was the first installation. As you can see, they're more LUL kind of design boxes. They had all kinds of fears that people would be, again, throwing themselves down the escalators if they were distracted with all the images on there. And worse, that they put Coke cans on top of them. So it became something that, again, because of the synchronization, we got the wow factor from day one. Everybody kind of bought into it. And suddenly, over, what was it now, 2005 this, so 12 years ago, we suddenly had a digital out-of-home space with some toys that actually people were talking about, especially that bloke.
Okay,
then,
stop. So, those people out of town...
Has he done this to anyone else?
No, just you. Well, you've been here all day, you know I have.
I know.
Okay.
Oh.
Just picking on you. Okay. Those of you out of town, no, you can stand up. Those of you out of town won't know that was CBS Outdoor before it's Stereo Media. But this is one of the things, again, I think the industry doesn't do enough of doing. And this is maybe a job for FEPI, because you have the ears of these people. We have in the room Tim Blakely, who was the CEO of CBS Outdoor when that happened.
No, I don't think he was.
You were.
I think Andy Oldham was.
Well, you weren't? Not for the 2005? When did you join? Oh, you weren't CEO, but you were the MD. But you're one of the men behind it. You helped pitch this whole thing. Yeah. Okay, so there was you and Nicky Cheshire and Tim Butler and drove the whole thing. And I don't think people like that get enough credit. I don't think you give him enough credit, even though I got his title wrong. Okay, because without these people monetizing what you were trying to do. Now, my link was, sorry.
I give him loads of credit.
You can sit down, have a pack of crisps. So, the interesting thing, the link between when what's your name? Peter. So when Peter showed the link devices, which are very clever and very nice, and if you go to New York and you see them and you see lovely, New York has an advantage over London in terms of links. This is my personal, humble opinion. Was the fact that, and you won't like this necessarily, but it works in London because it works in New York because when you stand on a street, because all the streets are straight, because Americans can't go around bends very well. Their cars don't go around bends, they don't go around bends. You see a long, great big street. So when you see it, it looks impressive because you see link, 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 link on every single block. You will never get that in London because we have bendy roads, we have bendy streets. Okay, so I think that's going to be a slight issue in terms of the thing.
We get it on escalators.
Well, no, here's the point.
We get it in malls.
Here's
and
the
we
point.
get it in airports.
Yes, but not on the streets of London.
Well, the Oxford Street one's the closest you're going to get.
That's the only thing you're ever going to get, which is what Deco have done, okay? So that makes sense. But that technology is solved. So my point was, the nice linkage, I think, is the fact that Link have these great devices, but I don't think they're going to be able to monetize them particularly well, just yet, okay? My own opinion. what I think was clever about your technology with digital escalator panels, and you deserve all the credit for inventing digital escalator panels and all the stuff you did, but then it only goes hand in hand with the people who monetized it for you, okay?
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to say. That's the joined up thinking. This man is the technology person. This is the man who builds the street furniture. But most of you guys, because we don't actually have very many technology people in the room, the media people are the ones who are responsible for monetizing it. And going back to the thing I said before about the Qualcomms and the Intels and the Ciscos, sometimes you technology people can jump into the realm of, I've got this great, brilliant, fantastic solution, and it's going to be the savior for everything. And because it isn't, because nobody ever figures out how to monetize it.
Yeah,
that was the link we rehearsed this, and that's what you were going to put in.
There have been some...
Sorry. Don't defend Peter.
No, I'm defending him. He made the point earlier, is that there were 5 or 6 things that all came together at once, and it's fair to say perhaps 3 of those things we'd all thought of, and 3 of them we hadn't thought of. So, for example, graffiti and chewing gum on static digital escalator panels was a massive issue. You put those screens in, of course, nobody went anywhere near them, because if something looks beautiful and whatever, it distracted people from it in many ways. So there were some win-wins there that I don't think any of us can claim to have strategically thought through. It just came together. The only thing I would say, which is slightly different to what Peter said, is whilst we didn't have global brands, it was one of those formats that, for a variety of reasons, actually was fully sold all the time. But it was sold to a particular type of advertiser, theatre advertising, kind of low yield advertisers, but high occupancy, most of the time fully sold. So it made sense to try and do something like that from an occupancy point of view. And I know there are other formats that have those challenges today, but all credit to Esprit. It was a fantastic development, and you should take the credit, not me, Peter.
Well, it was actually our CTO's idea. I just sold it. It was easy. Touching on that, I mean, some of the technology that basically he invented, the stuff which is the synchronization, which is what got everyone going. You've got Rocky running through the screens on one side, turning around at the top of the Philadelphia Library, and then running down the other side. Had commuters literally at rush hour going round and round, and we were all standing back going, oh shit, this is going to be like a nightmare. You're going to have a blockage at the bottom of the escalator. Anyway, so that was the obvious one. What wasn't so obvious, and what we learned is a glorified word sentence, thermal dynamics, which is how do we manage the heat within a very, very tiny environment, right? Where at Oxford Circus, we got 100,000 people a day in the summer going up and down an escalator. There's 100 screens on the walls, and the BTU, which is the body heat count, is just off the scale. The only way we could do it was to reverse the common thinking, which is to manage the environment within each box. So we invented this cooling system, and the proof of the pudding's in the eating. We're 11 years later. They're still in 18, 20 stations now, and they've never been refreshed. So they're still working. So obviously we were doing something right. And with that knowledge, it actually took us through to every other application we've done since. The mall pods is currently in vogue. I mean, this is what I spend, 80% of my time on is mall pods. It all started in Brent Cross with a great big lump, enormous great thing costing an absolute fortune, probably the best part of 40 grand for a double-sided touchscreen 65-inch, but it was beautiful. They probably only put about 3 or 4 of them in, and nowadays they're 4 inches deep, same size screen, and probably cost a third of the price. So you're able to deploy, like we did in Westfield, Australia, where there's best part of 1,000 of these things went in very, very quickly, probably 21 nights of installation. And you've got a host of toys in there that we didn't even have back then, and yet we've got it in a tiny little box. This is the latest one. This went in last week. We're doing the malls in Qatar at the moment, and it's one of a Deco partner called Elan Media. And again, it's a variation on a theme, 70-inch NEC screen, double-sided, dotted around the centre. And I thought before we get on to the future, which is probably why I'm standing here, I thought it might be worthwhile just finding out what I think are the reasons that Do has been so successful, all the obvious things that we've trotted out all day and everybody's known over the time, but it's worth reiterating. The impact, the immediacy, can you change the ads instantly? Do people actually look at them? Well, yes, we've got Quividia in every one. Most of the customers know who's actually looking at the screens. And can actually track whether they're buying anything from it. Day parting, audience targeting, all of this is very, very easy. One of the things that hasn't been talked about because it's my side of the fence is something called remote diagnostics. And this is, again, a glorified term for how do we keep a huge network of screens in Australia, because we manage them from here. There's something in the region of 1,600 odd screens that are reporting back to us 24/7, 365. And we can reflash the hard drives. We can reflash the BIOS if we want to on a screen in Perth within 3 minutes. And that basically cuts down on the physical visits. And that's absolutely key for us, because the big money is not now in the toys, it's in the support contracts and actually maintaining these things. And the less time I have to touch them, obviously the better it is for everybody. And of course the super fast return on investment. So that's, in my opinion, why Do has been so successful. This is our latest information desk for, you see it's a bit chaotic, all these slides are all over the place because Adrian got his hands on the presentation, but this is the new information desk in Stratford City. They're piloting this to go around. It's an LED, it can change, it's quite a bit of kit. So what of the future? This is, I think, of great interest. You've seen all the Minority Report films earlier, but what's actually going to happen over the next few years? How can we move the thing forward? I think bigger. I think the screen sizes are getting bigger. I mean, we just won Harvey Nichols in the Middle East, and we're putting in 98-inch LCDs that are going to be all over the place. And I think the big LEDs, literally there's no end to where they can go, and I'll show you a video in a second of one. Obviously brighter, lower power, cheaper. Now we've touched on that, and some of the newer features you'll hear. Glasses-free 3D, this is a particularly good one. At the moment, we're testing some new technology, brand new from America, and literally the image jumps out at you. So before you've had to wear glasses and it's been inconvenient, it hasn't actually been something that we've been able to integrate, but now I think we're pretty close to having something that really will make a difference. Double-sided panels themselves will help our side of things, which will, again, make it thinner, lighter, easier to install. Curved screens, well, you've seen what the LEDs can do. We've got tiles now that bend back on themselves, so literally there's no shape that we can't wallpaper at the moment in LED. And gesture-based interactivity is another new buzzword, because people don't like touching screens for various reasons of health and et cetera, and also the screens get dirty. So now what we're working with is you actually point at the icons, and that takes you through to Facebook. Do I look nice in this? Yes. Take a picture, buy some more, upsell, and that's something you're going to hear more of. Okay, so basically this is an LED product. It's like a Venetian blind, separated by about 4 inches, and the LEDs are nicely spaced out, so it's not too expensive, because obviously that's the cost. From distance, you can wrap any building in it, and you can see out from inside. Particularly like this one. Should be some music or something with this, no? Like 2001 or something. Anyway, that's called the Mesh. Ask me about it afterwards and I'll sell you some. This is some of the new stuff that you'll see in the future. Again, going back to the curved theory, we've just wrapped, this isn't even open yet, and we've just wrapped what we're calling the Runway, which is probably the most expensive mall in the Middle East. They've had a soft launch, but they're opening soon. And this is the runway to the leisure area, you can see at the end, and they've got kind of a half-a-mile ski slope and go-karts and bungee jumping and God knows what. But the point being is that you're using dead space, these columns, and we're able to wrap them really tightly in a reasonable res. I think this is about a 2 mil res LED, and then be able to get a really nice effect. So imagine Jaguar advertising on that with the cat going around one side and around the other. And the other thing I wanted to say is about the seamless integration. If you look at the Novo Cinema entrances, they've all changed. So yes, we've got normal LEDs, which are just basically lights, looking like dot matrix, but in there, inset, is a couple of large LEDs in the middle, just to give out trailers. And really, that's all I've got for you. Thank you very much.